Friday. I am really glad to be with you guys today. Let me know that you're here and that you're watching. Just put a little comment below where you're watching from. And I would love to know if you guys have gone through a transition recently or if you can think of one that you've had in your life and just put it in the chat. Um, Maybe it was a move or a relationship or just like a change of season that was really hard or kids going off to college, kids going off to kindergarten, whatever it is for you guys. Just put it in the chat because I think it's really nice to know like what kinds of transitions people are going through. And you know, transitions are really interesting for the nervous system because there's an element of the unknown and our brain loves to predict things. Our brain like not makes a living, but it kind of like makes us feel safe by our ability to predict things. And so when there's a transition and there's a period of time where you don't know what's going to happen, either with a relationship or a location or a new job, the brain can feel threatened because of that lack of information. And so there's a few things that you can do to help calm your nervous system and make the transition a little bit more easy for you. The other thing is that when we have an element of unknown, we can use this wonderful gift that God gave us called our imagination to just run like a mental movie around what's going to happen. So sometimes when my daughter's really nervous or I'm really nervous, I'll just think about like, okay, well, how's this going to play out? And run like a mental movie around who's going to be there, what's it going to look like. And even if I don't know, if I just imagine something, it gives my brain something to hold on to, something to soften the threatening reaction. Maybe that's tension in your muscles or a headache or fatigue. So when you put a new input of the imaginary situation, that can help calm your nervous system. The other thing about transition is there's this aspect of you have to let go of something. There's a loss and you're gaining something. So there's this like a rope with two ends. You have to like hold that tension of you're going to something new and you're letting something else go. Like we're kind of starting to move into fall and we're going to have to let summer go. And there's wonderful things about fall and there's wonderful things about summer that I don't want to let go of yet. So there's an aspect of grief around transition and an aspect of hope. So I think it's kind of nice to really journal, or if you're not a journaler, just like talk it out. Like what are the benefits of the transition that you're going into? What are the losses that you're having to leave behind? And doing some intentional breathing around those is really helpful for me because the breath, we're always having a transition. We're transitioning every single time we breathe. So filling up with the things that we are moving toward and embracing those, and then releasing and letting go of the things that we are moving on from, the letting the breath take the grief and the loss and move it. Because what happens with emotions or difficult transitions is it gets stuck. Like we have a hard time moving it through. So when you do it with intentional breathing, it's all with movement. So you don't tend to get as stuck. So I love using breath during transition. There's another aspect to transition for me where I am aware of like a spiritual transition, a spiritual change that's happening. And so I often will pray like, Father, what do you want for me in this season? Like, what do you want for me to do? And also on the other end of that, like, who do you want to be for me? Like, how is our relationship going to change in this season? And being aware of that and praying into that. That's really helpful for me because sometimes I'm surprised at the answer that I get. And, if I thought that it was going to be like, okay, let's do this kind of season. And then the Lord invites me into more like an internal, inward turning season. It's like, okay, I'm glad we checked in about that. Now that I have my marching orders, I can do that a little bit do this season a little bit differently and lean on you a little bit differently, get support a little differently. So I always like to pray about that. And then we talked about breathing. But one thing that I think is really nice is that essential oils, you breathe in and the smell goes from your olfactory nerve right into your limbic system, to your primitive brain. And that is the part of the brain that is always being like, am I safe? Is there a lion chasing me? Should we stop and lay in the fetal position for a little while? And so when you use essential oils and you're smelling them, either on your body, you put them on your body and you're smelling them, or in a diffuser, or just from the bottle, you're telling your brain, you're giving your brain more information. You're giving your brain a stimulus. And so that can be really calming during transition as well. And I love to use during transition something that mirrors that two ends of the spectrum. And I love using trees because they have that dual tension. They're going down, they're rooting down, and they're going up. So I love to use trees during transition. So some of my favorites are Idaho grand fir, pine, also good. And this is probably my favorite, Northern Lights black spruce. I love the spruce trees. We have one like by our mailbox, and it's so pretty. Cedarwood is also a good one, but any tree will do the job. I have another one called Sacred Mountain that I love that one, and that's like a combination of a lot of different trees. So that breathing in that dual tension and the medicine that the tree has to offer, that it can stay in perfect balance while it's going in both directions while we're going through that transition, I think is a really nice way to support ourselves and support our brains. There's one last tip I have for you on transition, and that is I have a bush flower essence called, you guessed it, transition essence. And this is a really nice flower essence, and it has to do with supporting you mentally, emotionally, physically, spiritually as you transition. And I have used it a lot in my life, like through moves, through different childhood, like different aspects of my children going through different stages. And I've used it with a lot of clients. I had one client who, she was ready to move. She wanted to leave the Boulder area and move on. And her husband did but didn't, and wasn't quite ready to make the transition. He had been kind of like hemming and hawing. We call this crotch syndrome. Like if you're stuck on both, you're stuck on top of the fence and you can't quite commit to either way, like staying or going, or you can't quite commit to the transition. It's painful. You're up there on the fence and there's like a lot of tension in your body. So crotch syndrome is not a fun place to be. So he was kind of in that spot. And so I said, do you want to try transition essence? And she was like, yeah. She's a homeopath. So she's like, let's go for it. So we did it. She gave it to him the next day, and in the afternoon of that same day, he was like, okay, I'm ready to move. I love that story because the transition essence can just really come in and support you in those places where you didn't even know you needed support, and help you move forward into the next step, because nobody likes crotch syndrome. So put in the chat, like, if you have a different way that you like to support yourself through transitions, and how you find movement and ease and grace in those moments. So I hope you guys have an awesome Labor Day weekend. What are you guys doing? Any picnics or trips or last summer hurrahs? Put it in the chat. I love to live vicariously through you. We were gonna maybe go somewhere, but we ended up we're gonna stay. My husband's going on a bow hunting trip next week, so we have some things to do around the house, and so we're gonna clean and organize. So woohoo! Yay! We're transitioning from disorganized to organized. I can get behind that, even if it's not a vacation. All right, you guys have a wonderful, wonderful weekend, and I will talk